We have a wonderful guest in studio we're very excited to have in this segment, author Springs Toledo. We're going to be talking about the Winter Hill Gang. Sure, you may know the names Whitey Bulger, James Whitey Bulger, Howie Winter, Stephen the Rifleman Fleming. Do you know about Joe Mack? Well, you may not know a lot about Joe Mack, and there's a reason. Joe Mack don't want you to know about Joe Mack. We're going to talk about him, though. It's Don't Talk About Joe Mack, the life, wars, and secret history of the man behind the Winter Hill Gang. Springs Toledo is in studio with us. Springs, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, great to have you on WATD. So excited to learn more about Joe Mack. So tell me, first of all, tell me how you became interested in Joe Mack.
Well, I'm originally from Boston, and I have a boxing background, and anybody who knows boxing gyms historically, they're kind of the farm league for the Boston underworld. So I heard his name mentioned for many years, just in whispers. You know, a lot of people didn't know who he was. And I noticed in all the books and the documentaries that he was mentioned in passing or maybe a footnote, but he was involved in all these murders. And I also noticed that he's an older man. He's about 20 years older than everyone else. So it piqued my interest, and I started to look into it. And the more I dug, the more I found. And I found a very fascinating story about this man's background, who he was, what he did, and what he was. And what he was something that everybody feared, including the killers who I spoke to and who knew him throughout his life. Whitey Bulger among them. Whenever they had a clash, it was Whitey Bulger who gave ground. Joe Mack was the one in the Boston underworld.
Wow. Okay. Wow. And there was a reason, because when it comes to Joe Mack was someone that you talked about that didn't trust anyone except maybe his daughters.
Right, yes. He was, the title is by design, Don't Talk About Joe Mack. And there's an irony there, because here we are talking about Joe Mack, but we can.
Right. We can now.
We can now, because he passed away in 1997. But even so, when I would talk to guys, I went deep into the Boston underworld, and I found guys who never spoke before. I couldn't just go and knock on their door. I had to use an intermediary, someone who I knew, who knew me, and who would introduce me to them and basically vouch for me. Then these guys would slowly open up. But I had good timing. In other words, a lot of these guys are a lot older now, and they wanted to get a lot off their chest. And it was also, my accent helped a lot. I had a Boston accent. That's made them feel good.
It opened some doors. Yeah.
It opened some doors. And so what happened was they spoke. For the first time in their lives, they talked to me. And, I had to be very careful. Some of these guys, when I mentioned his name, they would look around as if he was still alive. They got me looking around, too, before they spoke. But what they told me was fascinating. And the story that we think we know about the Winter Hill Gang and Whitey Bulger and the Boston underworld, well, it ain't necessarily so. There's a lot that came out in this book that has never come out before. It was not exactly safe to get a lot of it, but I thought it was important to tell this man's story.
Yeah, we're talking with Springs Toledo. The name of the book is Don't Talk About Joe Mack, and it's a fascinating story. When you talk about it being an older person, we're talking about the greatest generation. We're talking about World War II. He was in World War II, and a fascinating story if you believe in things like fate. What could have been? Tell me the story, as Joe Mack, he survives, right, about the World War II incident. I think this is fascinating because, again, it ties in right to the Four River Shipyard where his ship was built.
Well, when I started looking into this individual, now his name was Joseph Maurice McDonald. They called him Joe Mack. I assumed he was going to be a sociopathic personality like Whitey Bulger.
Yeah.
He was anything but. He was a family man. He was a father of 5. He was a teamster. He was a very loyal friend. He was a kind of a backslapping guy to those he felt safe around.
Yeah.
And finding his confidant in Jackie, that's one of his middle daughters, she decided to open up and to tell me about his family life, who he was, because he confided in her about a lot of things. And one of the things he told her and told the family was about how he was in World War II. He was in the Navy along with his brother, who was only 19 years old. In 1942, they were in the South Pacific on the USS Quincy. Not the USS Indianapolis like a lot of people think. It was the Quincy.
Yep.
And there was a night attack by the Japanese. and the brothers both on board the ship. And it was a surprise attack. They didn't expect it. A torpedo hit the Quincy. The Quincy is going up. There's fires everywhere. There's limbs flying. There's men screaming. It was a very traumatic experience. Joe, who was 25 at the time, found his brother, put his arm around him, scanning around for safety, when shrapnel takes his little brother's head off. He was 19 years old. The body fell over the side of the ship, went into the deep. What does Joe do? He dives in to retrieve the body. A promise to his mother is ringing in his ears. He promised his mother he would bring Jackie home safe at the end of the war. He dives in after the body. He's swimming for it, and the sharks get him first. It was mako, hammerheads, and tigers in there. Yeah. So now the ship goes down. Everything is black and silent. The Japanese sail out, and sailors are in the drink, and Joe's among them. Now, I heard that he was floating around about 5 hours. I know that. I did research on the World War II records and everything else. And what happened was some estimates say that he killed between 11 and 22 sharks that night. Wow. So my premise for the book is the man that they plucked out of the Savo Sound that morning is not the same man who sailed in.
No. Think about that. And you talk about that in the book, that he was never the same after that. Now, you also talk about that he was someone that really didn't like to confide in. However, we talk about his daughters. How did you get his daughter to tell you their story, who was, from what I understand, named after his younger brother?
Right. T.J. English, he's also a true crime author. I contacted him, and he let me know that he was friends on Facebook with Jackie. So he did an introduction, and I spoke to her, and I told her what I want to do. I want to look into her father. I think he has a story that should be told. And she said, "Give me a night to drink about it." And the next morning she said, "I'll tell you everything I know." So she's a critical part of the story, and her stories, she's actually the one to root for in the story. Yeah. She was close to her father, but she knew who her father was and what he was. She had to protect her kids from him. Not that he was a threat to the children, but because of his life, what he was with the FBI chasing him and all that. She had a lot of answers, and she was able to open the story up to make it something different than straight true crime. She was actually, her name was Jacqueline. She was named for the brother he lost. So I asked her, I said, "What did he call you?" And she said, "Jackie."
Jackie.
So you could see the ghost of Jackie haunts the story.
Yeah, and that experience affected him forever, and he came back. And as you talk about, to be clear, he was a criminal. This is someone that took lives. We're not trying to make him seem, like a hero. As you said, the daughter really is the hero, as you wanted to point out, to root for in this story about her having to grow up, and then, as you said, protect her this is their grandfather.
Right, exactly. And I talked to the grandchildren too, and he was a good grandfather. He would spend time and talk to them outside in the street. And meanwhile, he's on the top 10 FBI's most wanted fugitive list. So he's spending time with his grandchildren. I said that was more of an act of sacrifice than you think, because he's looking over his shoulder all day, every day. He was on the run for 6 years, and yet he took time for his grandchildren. Now, he was a killer. He killed more than anybody, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Steve Fleming will tell you he killed Abe Lincoln. He's not someone you can believe. That was Whitey Bulger's partner. Yeah. But Joe Mack killed more than twice as much as the murders that Whitey Bulger was indicted for. Mm-hmm. He killed twice as much +1 as John Martirano. But he allowed other people to take credit for the murders he did, which is thinking smartly. It's also been said that Joe Mack, and this is coming from guys in the underworld, they said Joe Mack never killed anyone who didn't need killing. Now, that's debatable, but he did have a code. He didn't kill women, no children. Yeah. He killed guys who broke the rules. He killed guys who posed a threat to him. No excuse. I mean, he was a very, very dangerous individual. And he was also an alcoholic. And at the end, when the alcoholism got to him, he became a lot more dangerous, a lot more lethal.
Don't talk about Joe Mack, Springs Toledo, the life, wars, and secret history of the man behind the Winter Hill Gang. All right, we have kind of just scratched just barely the surface. So if you want to dive in, fascinating story of someone that it sounds like on purpose really stayed in the shadows. As you talk about, there's a lot of different events where Joe Mack was there, but we didn't know he was there initially until we got some of these stories. So, Springs, how do people get the book to find out more?
Best deal is go to Amazon. There's an electronic version, and there's the hardcover as well.
All right. And again, the website for Springs is springstoledo.com. That's springstoledo.com. Don't talk about Joe Mack. And by the way, we do have an event we're going to talk about June 11th, right? Just give a little plug. That's coming up. If people want to see you.
That's Thursday, 6 o'clock at the West End Museum down at 150 Stanford Street. It's on LeMasney Way, which is right beside it. And I'm going to have a presentation there about Joe McDonald, and we'll get into some of the stuff, especially about the war and what he went through and how it affected his life. So buy a ticket now. It's easy to get. $10 plus a $2 cover charge or a fee or whatever. $12 and you get in, you get a signed book. And hey, you should get a signed book because I might get shot over this and it'll be worth some money.
There you go. So go down and get it while you can. Springs Toledo. Don't talk about Joe Mack. Springs, been great to have you on here. Fascinating story. Thank you for sharing it with us today.
My pleasure.